All right, let's get right into it. What we're looking at here is this classic city story playing out right now in Charlotte's most interesting neighborhood, NoDa. And it really boils down to one big question. Who gets to decide what this community looks and feels like? Is it the people on the ground making it vibrant? Or is it the city trying to keep things, orderly? You hear this phrase a lot from people there when they talk about the street vendors. And it's so important because it tells you this isn't just about someone selling stuff on a sidewalk. For the folks who live and work at NoDa, these vendors are woven right into the identity of the place. They're part of the fabric. So, if we really want to get what's at stake here, we first have to understand the soul of NoDa. We've got to look at this really unique ecosystem and the part that vendors play in keeping it alive. So, what is NoDa? Well, for starters, it's short for North Davidson, and it is not just any other neighborhood in Charlotte. It's really the city's cultural heart. It's famous for that artsy, eclectic vibe. It used to be an old textile mill village, but artists moved in and just completely transformed it, turning it into this amazing creative hub that it is today. And, a huge piece of that identity is the street vending scene. It's been able to flourish because, historically, NoDa was kind of a special zone, exempt from most of the city's permit rules. And what that did was create this incredible low-barrier launchpad for entrepreneurs. A place where anyone, including immigrants and other marginalized folks, could start a business and build a livelihood. But here's the twist. That very lack of regulation, the exact thing that helped NoDa's amazing culture grow, is now at the center of this big tension. It's a clash between the freewheeling vibe that makes the neighborhood special and, the practical realities of a fast-growing city. And this really gets to the heart of the dilemma. On the one hand, this system is a massive cultural asset, right? It encourages entrepreneurship, creates that cool vibe, and even brings more customers to the brick-and-mortar stores. But, on the other hand, it's causing some real friction. We're talking crowded sidewalks, blocked storefronts, and you've got some established businesses complaining that the competition isn't exactly fair. So, as this tension started to build, two totally different solutions popped up. And they really represent two opposing ideas for how to manage the future of NoDa streets. So first up, the vendors themselves. They didn't wait around. They got organized, formed a group they call NoDa Vendor Corps, and they decided to come up with their own solution from the ground up before the city could impose one on them. Pretty proactive. And their whole vision is built on this idea of self-governance. The plan was, instead of top-down city rules and fines, they'd create their own set of voluntary community guidelines. Peer pressure and just talking things out would be the enforcement. It's a model that's really built on trust and shared responsibility. The Charlotte City Council, though, they had a different idea. They went down a more traditional path, proposing a top-down pilot program. We're talking official permits, city enforcement, and financial penalties for anyone who doesn't play by the new rules. And this chart, wow, it just lays out the difference perfectly. You can really see the two philosophies clash. On the left, you've got the vendor's plan. It's all about community, voluntary rules, empowerment. And then on the right, you've got the city's plan. Top-down control, mandatory rules, and standardization. Two totally different worlds. So even with the vendor's plan on the table, the city decided to go ahead with its own 6-month pilot program. Let's take a quick look at how their top-down approach actually works. First thing, let's talk money. Under the city's new rules, if you want to be a non-food vendor, it's going to cost you $90 for a 6-month permit. And what happens if you don't follow the rules? Well, there's a penalty for that. And it's a civil fine that can go all the way up to $500 for each violation. Now, this pilot program is also really specific about who's in and who's out. It's basically designed to welcome artisans, so if you're selling handmade art, crafts, jewelry, you're good. But it specifically prohibits two major groups, all food and beverage vendors, and anyone who's just reselling mass-produced stuff. So you might be asking, why the total ban on food? This quote from Mecklenburg County Public Health gets right to it. The city is pointing to major public health concerns, specifically the risk of foodborne illness from unregulated food. It was a risk they just decided they wanted to take completely off the table for this pilot. Okay, so here's the most important thing to remember. This story is not over. Not by a long shot. The city's program is just a test. It's temporary. And that fundamental conflict of visions, it is still very, very much alive. So what we have now is basically a real-world experiment playing out. The city is collecting its data, trying to see if its rules can bring order.
Meanwhile, the vendors are still organizing, still making the case that their self-governance model is the real long-term solution.
So if you're watching this situation, here are the dates to circle on your calendar. The pilot kicked off in July 2025, and enforcement began in August. But the really big moment comes in January 2026. That's when the city's going to evaluate this whole thing and decide what happens next. And that leaves us with this huge question. And it's not just for NoDa, it's for pretty much every city out there. What's the right way to manage the messy, vibrant, sometimes chaotic, but totally essential life of our public spaces? Is the answer bottom-up community control, or is it top-down civic order? The answer they find is going to define the soul of this neighborhood for years to come.